All right. Welcome to Pan-African Perspectives, your weekly live stream where we talk about all things Africa related. We interview people from the continent, people on the continent, and people in the diaspora focused on building businesses in and around the continent of Africa. This week, we have a special guest who's going to talk to us a little bit about how to build tax-free wealth strategies for those of you who are working on investments on the continent of Africa. As you guys know, I'm building a house. And as many of you know, I also help people visit, move, and invest in Africa. So we're going to talk today with Dr. Sandra Bempah, PhD, who's on a mission to help business owners and investors have easy access to cash flow. She's going to help you talk about ways to stop overpaying in taxes and start building wealth with intention. So she specializes in creating strategies that generate accessible tax-free cash flow while reducing unnecessary tax liability legally and efficiently. As an investor and business owner herself, Sandra understands that the entrepreneurs and investors' cash flow is oxygen. So without liquidity, opportunities are missed, growth stalls, and hard-earned assets become vulnerable. Now, as you guys know, when you want to buy land on the continent or anything you want to do on the continent of Africa, it costs cash. It's hard to get loans. Many people do like personal loans, business loans to build properties on the continent. And so this is meant to give you an alternative to that. So without further ado, I will bring Sandra on. Hello, Sandra. What's up?
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining. We have met through your brother, who has
Yes.
been helping me shoot a ton of content in Ghana while I was in Ghana. And he mentioned to me that what you do. And so you and I had a conversation a few weeks back.
Yes.
And I thought it would be a good idea to bring you on to talk to the audience here, because many folks here are looking to invest on the continent. And I've heard all kinds of crazy different ways that people try to generate cash to spend that cash on continent. And so you have some strategies. You're a professional in the space. So I thought maybe we could have them hear directly from you, ask you questions directly, and help people get an opportunity to know what tax-free strategies are out there for your Africa investment. So just real quick, want to shout out a couple of people. London Boy is here. Edward is here. And hopefully, Peter, we just answered your questions. So before we do you want to give a little bit of a background on what you do before we get into a little bit about your background, and then we can talk a little bit more about what these strategies look like?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a privilege to be here on your platform, talking with all these amazing people and enlightening and educating them about the different financial strategies that they can use for their investment back home in the motherland. As Joe mentioned, I'm Sandra. I was born and bred in Ghana, West Africa. I moved to the US for educational purposes where I did my graduate program, and then I took some courses in finance. My husband is accountant, so we speak a lot of money language in this household. And my background, I have been trained specifically about the different financial portfolios that investors can use to their advantage, irrespective of whether they are in the US or doing it abroad. And so that is what my background speaks about. I specifically help people to optimize their assets so that they have the proper transfer plan in place without any additional taxes or financial overlay. Now I understand that different people have different needs, and so I tailor everything to the specific objectives that everyone who sits in front of me talks about. So thank you for having me here, and I'm looking forward to answering questions and educating people some more.
Absolutely. So, guys, if you're watching and you have any specific questions for Sandra as we go along, feel free to add them, and we will bring them up. So, disclaimer: first of all, I guess we should say that I am in the process of setting some things up with Sandra myself. So, I think I would mention that just so you all are aware. But usually I ask, where you're from, where you're born, and where you were raised. You've already mentioned that. And you've also kind of given us a little bit of background on how you kind of got, what you do, what it is, what you do.
Mhm.
Can we talk about how you actually got into, finance and helping folks do what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I've always loved the subject of money and math. I've always wondered how money works. And when I moved to the US, I was surprised with the way there was a very big gap in financial literacy. So
Mhm.
most people were just running after the credit card system, running after loans, or running after, I mean, things that we are told orally to do without really getting to the bottom of it. Like, to me, there was more. When someone told me the best way to get money was through credit card or build your credit was through credit card, I always wanted to know more. Always wanted to know, okay, there should be other ways. There can't just be one way. And so that curiosity led me to take some financial courses whilst during my graduate program, where I got to understand some of the financial portfolios in America. But then
Mhm.
again, I realized not everything is taught in school,
Mhm.
because a lot of people graduate and there's still this big financial literacy gap in there because they don't know how to manage their money. They run into a lot of debt. They graduate school with a lot of student loans, and people are always in debt in America. So my curiosity, I kept digging down, and that led me to take some financial certification. So I'm licensed in the US to provide financial education strategies and asset protection for individuals, because um, I have learned the ways that are not taught in
Mhm.
school, unconventional ways that are not taught in school, and be able to impact into investors, into everyday people, to be able to reposition their financial portfolios so that they don't find themselves doing the common things that everybody does. Because guess what? We have a very big tax book that has so many tax codes in there that the financial elite are using it for their advantage. What about you? Why are you not using them? Because of the
Right.
knowledge gap. And that is what I bring to the table. And that is why I'm specialized, or I have that authority to speak on those subjects today.
Good point. So that's kind of the why. Can you help us understand the what? Like, what specifically do you do for, and who do you work with, right? So who do you work with, and what do you do for them?
Right. I work with everyday Americans. I work with investors. I work with real estate investors, business owners. I help them to reposition their assets. So, for instance, if you are an investor in the motherland, what assets do you have in the US that we can leverage so that it's working for you in the US and equally in the motherland? For instance, I had a lady come to me, and for the most part, she was just sending money back home from her bank account, and that is not good. So what we
Mhm.
had to do was reposition her assets, because once you send money back home to the motherland, we should know that it's locked in there. Okay. Getting that money back is a bit of a hurdle. So we have to reposition your assets, put in a proper structure in place so that once you even take money back home, you still have money here working for you. You don't have to work double time to have money here working for you. How did we do it? We created her own bank. She has her own bank, not leveraging, not using the traditional banks. We created her own bank for her that she borrows money from to invest in Africa. I call it you having your financial base in the US as the engine, okay? And then having your investment properties in the motherland as the multiplier, and then the proper structure in place as the protection. All these three come together to make sure that you are efficiently doing what you do, not just shipping money back home, but then having a system and structure in place to make it work well for you.
Absolutely. I've there was a video I watched recently, and it was a pretty viral video, and it was talking about this guy from Nigeria was talking about how he's working 3 jobs in the U.S., but he's sending money back home to his brother who's living an amazing life in Lagos. He's what do they call it? Odogu. He's
Yeah.
Odogu silencer in Nigeria, but him here in the U.S. is struggling with his 3 jobs
Mhm.
and his Toyota Corolla. And
Mhm.
so, that's one thing that I think is really important to talk about is the fact that remittance is what is so much more money in remittance goes to the continent than in investments. And I think you could do more if you had investments for the help of those people that you're helping through remittance.
Right.
So now on that note, I know that you often say wealth isn't what you earn, it's what you keep. So along these lines, can you expand on that philosophy and how it shapes the advice you give to your clients?
Absolutely. Remember when I started, I said there's a lot of financial knowledge gap in the US population. And most of the time, especially those of us from the motherland or those of us looking to invest in the motherland, the first thing we are thinking about is how much money can we take back home? How much can we send back home? We saw this investment property. How much can we take back home? We go and look into our bank account. Okay, we don't have enough. Let's work 3 jobs. Let's work overtime to make that money that we can send back home. But what if there was a different way? So when you make, let's say, 10,000 a month, how much of that money are you actually keeping?
Right.
How much of it is actually going into an investment account working for you whilst you sleep? Because when we make that money, let's say 5,000, 10,000 a month, and we send about 80% of it back home, you are losing that power to make your money work for you.
Mhm.
You are losing that power to hold on or keep that much to make it keep birthing for you so that you are building your wealth in that way. For people that I work with, for instance, one gentleman that came to me, when we were looking through his financial portfolio, we realized that I usually do a comprehensive financial analysis with you to see how much is coming in, how much is going out, how can we reposition things and make sure that you have more working for you than is going out. We realized that this man was working 3 jobs. He barely slept. And apart from the fact that he's taking a toll on your health, your mental health is also at risk. So he's making 10,000 a month, but then 8,000 of it is going back home because he's building back home. And remember, you still have bills in the US to take care of. Now,
Mhm.
what did we do? We repositioned all of that, created a system for him where the money he earns goes into that system. That system is protected from market losses. It is protected from taxes, and it is protected from currency risks. That's maybe African currency going down and all the fun stuff that come with it. It is protected from all of that. Now, if he sees something in Africa and he's like, "Hey, I need to go get this property," he's able to loan from that and go buy that property. And the money that is in this system is untouched. His principal is still there, it's still growing over time. He's just leveraging it to make that investment in Africa also come through for him. At the end of the day, he had to quit one of his jobs. He moved down to two. He's been able to move down to two, save some time on rest. And eventually, by the end of this year, he should have, or maybe mid this year, he should have moved down to just one job. And that work life balance comes in. He's getting to enjoy the money that he's making, both in Africa and here. So that is what I talk about when I say wealth is not what you earn, but it's actually what you keep. Because if you are keeping nothing, then you are literally just nothing. You're just working for the wind.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to that point, obviously that is a story of so many, right? I mean, I'm a first generation American, or sometimes they call it second generation American, but that was it, right? Just working all the way through to retirement, and for many, there's not much left to or much to show for it, right? And so I think that's one of the challenges. And then what I see from the baby boomer generation, at least from Sierra Leone and who I come in contact with, many of them start later in life to start the process of building a home to retire in, right? They start thinking about retirement in their 50s and 60s, and then they're starting to think, okay, I want to retire. What money do I have access to now to start pouring into building a house, which is obviously difficult, taking out personal loans, etc. So let's talk about strategy, right? What is the primary structure or vehicles that a diaspora investor can use to significantly reduce their tax burden, but also then to begin to potentially develop some cash so that they can invest in real estate on the continent?
Right. So there are so many vehicles, so many tools in my toolbox that I use. Depending on who is sitting before me, as I mentioned, we do a comprehensive analysis. The most important thing for me is to set up a foundation, a strong foundation for you. So
Okay.
if you want me to list out tools or vehicles, there are quite a number of them. I wouldn't want to do that. But the most important thing for me is the structure. Let's have a proper structure in place. Let's be proactive in making sure that, for instance, you want to retire in 10 years' time, you want to have an investment property back home. How can we do that so that your investments, your money, and your time, as well as your health, are protected? How can we do that so that cross border litigation issues do not become a headache? Because there are people who focus so much on building back at home, but they forget about cross border litigation, they forget about cross border taxes, how to overcome all of that. So when you sit before me as as a client that I'm working with, the first thing that we do is to look at what are some ways that we can be proactive and ensure that cross-border litigations, cross-border taxes are out of the picture. So we put all these structures in place and make sure that the money you are taking from the US to Africa is tax-free, first off. So we have eliminated that taxations from the US side. And it's also very accessible. Accessible meaning we want money tomorrow, we get it, we put it in place today, we get it tomorrow for that opportunity capital we saw in Africa. Okay. And then also, I'll talk about the cross border litigation. There are some families that they focus so much about building in Africa. Perfect. No bad thing about it, because at the end of the day, most of us say we want to retire back home. Why? Because we've built that financial foundation here, strong dollar foundation that we can leverage. But then when we are building back home, what protection do we have in place to ensure that our wealth is transferred generationally? Because without the right structure and protection in place, I've heard stories, and I believe Joe, you have also heard stories of people pass on to glory and then everything they build come crashing down. You may be asking yourself, why are there so many African companies, top big multi-million companies, but it never goes about after them. Generationally, it gets cut off because there's no structure in place. And that is what I help clients with. Ensure that those structures are in place. So when it comes to tools, there are so many in the toolbox. It depends on who I'm talking to, your goals, and your objectives. That's what determines what tool we bring out to make sure that you are getting tax-free strategies for yourself and for your investments.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And I was going to ask you about cross-border litigation. And so can you just kind of define that though as well? Like, what does cross-border litigation really mean? Like for the layman's terms?
Yeah, it just means you have, let's say, property in, I'm Ghana, I'm going to be biased, folks, forgive me. So you have a property in Ghana and you are in the US. You have family back home who feel maybe entitled to that property, or
Mhm.
maybe because they were looking after that property for you when you were building it. So, hey, they have their skin in it, even though their pocket was not in it. Um, and so, let's say in the event that something happens and they're like, who actually owns this? You have family back here in the US who feel like, okay, we are your immediate family, wives, spouse, children, whatever. They are also entitled to that. What plan do you have in place to ensure that there is no such back and forth fights between families over who owns what property?
Mm.
The event God calls you to glory or you become God's angel, what plan do you have in place to ensure that it's clearly spelled out that my property in Ghana, in Accra, is for person A, or my property in the US is for person B? What's
Mhm.
How do you prevent that? Those form of litigation issues. And also some people, when it comes to it may be land litigation issues. Joe, you may be in the US, you have some
Mhm.
landed property in Ghana, and there are litigation issues that come up. It could be from land guards, it could be from a diverse range of things. Maybe someone didn't do some paperwork right. How are you ensuring that your assets in the motherland is protected from all those litigation issues?
Mhm. Yeah, those are really good points. And as someone who's dealing with cross-border litigation, I wanted to touch on that a little bit more because it is challenging.
Mm,
Uh, it is very challenging, and it's.
yeah.
I always say you are not African unless you're dealing with a land dispute.
Yes.
It is very challenging, and it's something we all deal with, especially when you have people who are, from the continent but living in the diaspora. And man, it is difficult. Okay, so on that topic, right? You know, I do want to ask you about making sure you have the right structure in place to allow for generational wealth. I mean, I know every single situation is different, right?
Mhm.
But can you just give some examples of some of the things that people can do to ensure that their assets are protected and they do get passed down to the next generation?
Absolutely. So the first thing, if you're taking notes, I want you to write this four structures down, this four layers down. The first thing is protection. Protection can be in the form of maybe a trust, where you put everything in. A trust is like a big bucket where you put all your assets in. It's protected from litigation, it's protected from probate, and it's protected from creditors, depending on how it's set up. Okay. So we have that protection in there. Then we have liquidity. You can agree with me, as someone who also has property in the motherland and here, you can agree with me that opportunity capital is one of the biggest headaches for investors. If we see a property today and you don't have easy access to cash to go get it, you are going to lose it. The one where the cash gets the property. Okay. So, as a strategist, that is one of the things I do with my clients. We plan ahead. I am proactive with you. We plan ahead to make sure that you have that capital in place, liquidity in place, so that you are not losing the investments that you see and get them on time. You see it, we grab it because we have the money right available. So that's the second layer, protection, liquidity. The third one is currency awareness. We know that when it comes to the US dollar versus African dollar currency, there could be some volatilities with exchange rates and all of that. And
Mhm.
we want to make sure that money that we are sending home is not locked up in the motherland, because sending it back to the US can be of a headache. So,
Mhm.
as a strategist, what I do with you as a client is to evaluate those risks. What is the risk of sending money home right now? And if we needed to do something else in the US, how can we leverage these two? So I create that currency awareness or work towards that currency awareness risk to make sure that we are not losing any value in either ways. And then the fourth one is the cross border planning. As we already mentioned, we already talked about litigation issues. That is almost inevitable. If you are in the motherland, you should know the laws that govern it and how that affects your investment properties. So we sit down and we do all those planning around that to make sure that you have all of these in place. So that when you decide that you saw a property in Ghana, a 2 bedroom, a 4 bedroom, a landed property, a commercial property, and you want to acquire that, all of these are already in place, and we are not now scratching our head to find out, okay, what do we need to do?
Mhm. All really good insight. So as you were talking, something came to mind for me, and it's the idea of um, managing expectations, right? So so many of us, you know, get excited. We go to the continent for the first trip, and now we're like, we're ready to buy some land, ready to buy something. But to your point, you may run into that challenge of not having liquidity.
Yes.
So obviously, you've already said this, and everyone should be aware of this. Every situation is different. But can you give an example of how someone can put money aside to make sure that it is available for use later for a land purchase, etc., or for a to put a down payment down, something to that effect, just so people can kind of walk through what the steps might look like with you to
Mhm.
get there. Obviously, every situation is different. Everybody's income is different. Everyone's ability and to have access to capital to put away is different. But can we just talk through what that might look like from a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you come to me and we have to go through this process, trying to set up a structure in place for you, for investors that I work with, the first thing we do is to create an infinite banking system for this investor. What does that mean? It means they own their own bank. They are not leveraging a traditional bank system or borrowing from a lender or anything. We create a bank for them, a virtual bank for them, where they own everything in that bank. Just consider it like your favorite bank, Chase, whatever. But then this is for you. This is for you. It's a Joe bank, okay? In that bank, we put in money. Whatever money that goes in there is growing tax free. It's protected from market volatility. So if the market goes up, we gain, we have all those gains. If it goes down, we don't lose anything in there. When an opportunity comes up in the motherland and we want to get a property, we get money out of it tax free. We are not paying taxes on anything on there. Trust me, IRS knows you have it, they don't care. It's completely tax free. You don't report it anywhere on your tax return form. And then you have easy access to this money. There's no credit checks, there is no long application, there is no background checks or anything. You get access to this money as quick as possible. We are eliminating the traditional banks here because remember, we are building your own bank for you, and your money is protected from any losses. For investors that I work with, when we set up these private banks for them that they own, they are able to leverage their money to work for them in two ways. One way, they're able to take the money to make it use of it in Africa, which is the multiplier effect. They are gaining money from their investment in Africa. And the second is if they have assets in the US, they are equally able to leverage that money and have that same tax dollar work for them in two different ways. So that is how I go about it with my clients that come to sit before me. My key focus, because I know that as business owners, as investors, one of our headaches is taxes. So I don't say taxes are bad, but then paying unnecessary taxes is something that I try to eliminate for every investor.
Yes, great. So you mentioned something that I had a question for when we spoke offline, and that was how do you protect against market volatility? And that phrase might not be unclear to people. So just real quick, when we're talking about market volatility, we're talking about, like I have a investment portfolio, right? Small one, but like, we hear the S&P 500 stock market goes up and down. You hear these phrases and this terminology, and you've heard from the financial crisis, right? People had money in the stock market. The stock market dropped dramatically. They lost money.
Mhm.
You just mentioned that this is a protection against market volatility. So meaning the volatility means it goes up and can go down. and you can pull out your money from this bank that you're creating for yourself. How is this protected against market volatility? Can you explain that?
Yes, I can. On my one of my pages, I made a post about it. About I call it a heart attack about to happen. You know, when you go to you have a scan or an echogram where you see the chart just going up and down. That's how the market looks like. It's like you make
Mhm.
money in the morning, in the evening, you're like, oh my goodness, what happened? A political leader sneezed and then the market went down. And you are
Mhm.
losing both your principal and your interest that you made. Now,
Mhm.
with this private banking system that I'm talking about, when the market goes up, like let's say an S&P, the Nasdaq, the Dow Jones, your money is linked to them, okay? So it's not directly in the market. When the market goes up, you make the gains of the market. So whether 20%, 8%, whatever percentage the market is. But when it goes below zero, when a political leader sneezes or some form of economic disruptions happen and it goes below zero, you do not lose anything. You are floored at zero. And I always say zero is the hero because not losing your principal is better than losing both principal and interest. So that is how your money is protected with this private bank system. There are different tools that we can use for this private bank system, but as I mentioned, zero is the hero. We are not losing anything when the market decides that today is a bad day. We want to make lots of some money. And I know about 2 weeks ago, the S&P lost as much as 700 billion, and
Mhm.
people who had money in the S&P or in the market were really shaken up because most investors had money in there. And if you had seen an opportunity at that time and you wanted to take it, you didn't have access to money. But with a structure like your own private bank system, where you don't have to worry about how bad the market is doing, you have access to money at any time that you want it.
That's a good point. And so just to, maybe add to that a little bit, I think one of the things that, if you have money in like Robinhood or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Um, the idea of the principal and losing the principal that Sandra's talking about is if you put in, let's say, $100 and you buy a bunch of stock that goes up to $200, and now you've doubled your principal, right, from what you've gotten. If the stock market crashes, and specifically what stock you've bought, and they go below what you bought them for, the money you put in and the money you gained gets depleted, right?
Okay.
So the $100 you put in gets depleted, and the $100 you made by going up to $200 gets depleted. And so what you're saying is, with this process, no matter what happens with the highs and lows, the at least the amount that you put in still stays there. So regardless of anything that happens, so that $100 in this scenario stays at $100 no matter what happens. That doesn't go away. But of course, we're talking about putting in money over time, so you wouldn't just put in $100. You continue to put more money in, but basically that money does not go away.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really important point. And I'm glad that you mentioned that distinction. Um, okay, so I do want to ask you now about the idea of like those who basically want to take all their money out of the U.S. Because of all the things they're hearing about the dollar volatility and the conditions, the current conditions after a pretty volatile weekend, for example. We'll leave it at that. What advice do you give to someone who is thinking, I need to get all my money out of here because of what's happening here with, all the things that are going on? And that could be basic at any time under any administration, because there are people who feel that way no matter what's happening and who's president or whatever's happening. But what are your thoughts on someone who's thinking, I want to take all my money out and just move it to Africa?
I always say it's not a question of should I take out all my money and put it in Africa or not. It's a question of it's a question of systemic risk. So what is your risk level? What is your long-term goal? And why are you wanting to move all your money? Because as I mentioned, you having a strong dollar foundation in the US is the engine you need for that multiplier effect in Africa. We should also remember there's also the currency risk when it comes to Africa. So at any time, you could have whatever currency risk in Africa. It could also depreciate, it could appreciate. By you saying you taking all your money out, does that mean you're also moving out of the US? Or are you staying in the US and then just moving the money? There's so many layers to that question. So it's not about panic decision making. It's about being proactive. And that's what I help my clients with, being proactive, proactive thinking. We can't control the future. There will be events that may cause a lot of disruptions. There will be events that will cause disruptions to different currencies. But if we are forward thinking and proactive with how we are strategizing our finances and our portfolios, then we wouldn't panic and take out anything. And with the kind of infinite banking system I'm talking about, remember I said you don't lose anything in there. So there wouldn't be even any need to panic, take out anything.
Got it. That's really useful and really helpful. I have a couple of like wrap up questions. And by the way, for the audience, if those who are watching, if you have any questions, feel free to add your questions in the chat. I'm just trying to see if there are any other questions as I look through here. I do have other specific questions. Just as you've been talking, some new things have come to mind for me. So one of the other questions that I had was, and now I'm losing, oh, I'm in the wrong tab. Here it is. Okay. So what are some of the vehicles that some people never talk about? Like one of the things that you and I spoke about was a high interest savings account, HISA, right?
HYSA.
HY, high yield savings account. Can we discuss that? Like something just so basic like that.
Mm-hmm.
A regular bank account that you have with pick an institution and a high yield savings account. Because I remember you asking me that question. Do I have one? Well, anyway, I want to answer that question for the public. But your thoughts on the differences between the two, right? And even the percentages in savings, just to give an idea of like some of the things that people should be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. So first off, if you have your money in your bank account, don't do that. Because the bank is leveraging your money to make a lot of money and lending it back to you as an investor to make more money off you. So don't do that. The only thing you need in your bank account is maybe your revolving expenditure, maybe your grocery shopping, your mortgage payments, anything basic. But everything outside of that, you want to reposition it in different buckets. We have the HYSA that you talked about that you can use for maybe your emergency savings. But for top investors, they want to use a tax-free bucket for it. So you could earn anything between 3% to as much as 25% or whatever percentage that it comes with. Do not save your money in your bank account because you are depleting it. Wherever you are saving your money should beat inflation. For the past decade, we've had inflation average about 3%. So wherever you're saving your money, it should beat inflation by that 3%. Okay? It should be protected from market losses like we have discussed initially, and it should be easily accessible. Now, when you sit before me as a client, we will go through all of that, reposition and make sure that everything is going to work out for your advantage. Again, proactiveness is my core. We being proactive and forward thinking. Different buckets for different uses and for different purposes.
Great. So there's a question here from Regina 9814 Chosen is asking, how do people get in touch with you?
Regina, you can get in touch with me via email. So sandyfinancialsolutions@gmail.com. You can send me an email. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can DM me in such spaces and I will reply to you. When you DM me, just say, hey, I'm from Joe's podcast, and we'll get it rolling.
Yeah. And then, so, yeah, I mean, and are there any other things? I see a lot of people listening and watching, but not necessarily asking questions. So they must feel like they have all the answers that they need. But they can also reach out to you directly if they have any specific personal questions that they want to ask that maybe they don't feel confident sharing publicly. So, I think the other question I was going to ask you was just around your thoughts on anything I didn't ask you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would want the audience to know?
So, one thing that I want the audience to know is if you are thinking about investing in Africa, maybe you are in the US and you are thinking about investing in Africa, your first action shouldn't be how much money can I take home. Your first action should be how can I structure my finances so that even when I take money home, I'm not in a sinking boat in the US. That should be your first thing. Because most of the time when we think about investment back home, we are just thinking about how much money we can take out back home. In that way, you are just shipping money. You are not investing. Smart investors that I work with, we build a structure first because we understand that it's like building a house. If you don't have a good foundation, that whole house is going to come tumbling down.
Right.
So we build that strong foundation first. Make sure that the right structure is in place first before you start thinking of investing back home.
So that's a great point. I see that. Okay, so Regina was asking you to repeat your. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write in the comments.
Okay.
And then also I'm going to update the descriptions on the live screen for everyone, Sandra's social media.
Yes.
So I'm also going to share with you the booking link so you can book some time with her to talk to her directly. But take a look at the chat there. Regardless of where you're watching on the chat, you will have a bunch of links showing up in the chat for you there.
You want to separate them there. You've put about 3 or so together.
Yeah. So let's just do this. Let's just do the booking page, right?
All right.
Then everything else will be in the chat, right? So I'm just gonna send the booking page here. Everything else will be in the description afterwards. So just look at that. It's coming across now. Let me see if there are any other questions. I know I just.
Yeah, whilst you're looking at that, they can also text me on 330-422-8148. 330-422-8148.
There we go.
So that's a US number, so +1.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I just dropped that in there in the chat, but I did not put +1. So, yeah. So those of you who are interested in getting in touch with Sandra directly about this topic, you can text her directly at the number that she just shared. And also you can book some time with her booking link that I also shared and some of the other links there. Well, guys, I don't see many other new questions coming in. I see a lot of people watching, but not a lot of people participating with questions. So if you feel that you'd like to talk to her directly, her information was just there. I want to thank you, Sandra, for doing this. I appreciate you taking the time. Those of you who are listening and watching, I want to thank you for watching this far in. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Sandra on her social media channels. They will be in the descriptions following this live stream. Also, her contact information will be there as well if you want to reach out to her directly. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Authentic African, follow us across all platforms. If you haven't already, share this with anybody you know who's interested in building some investments or building some strategies for tax-free wealth for their investments in the continent and doing so from here in the United States. So you can send this video to them. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I've actually said that. Hit that thumbs up so you can let the platforms know that you're interested. And then those of you on YouTube, you can hit that hype button So we could try that hype thing out. You get 3 per month or something like that. So hit that hype button as well. That's a new thing that YouTube has rolled out. All right, so thank you again, Sandra, for doing this, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys all on the next live stream.
Thank you so much, Joe, and have a great day. Looking forward to talking with everybody more about this and how they can leverage it for themselves.
All right.